By the beginning of the 1980s, with 2 successful Rocky films, both Stallone and the character he created had gotten big. Really big.
And everywhere we went, they chant Rocky.
Rocky had made Stallone famous. Rocky II had made him rich. The boy from Hell's Kitchen was reaping the benefits of fame on a world stage.
We went to the Oval Office together to see Jimmy Carter. We went to see Ali Spinks fight. It's like being a kid in a candy store when you succeed in Hollywood. And it was a great candy store. I mean, we were in a restaurant in Washington, D.C., and a really expensive, fancy restaurant. Some girl came up, lifted her skirt with no underwear right at the table, and she was beautiful.
It was no wonder that Stallone was caught up in his celebrity, living in the white-hot glare of the cameras.
So here's a guy who grew up, wasn't part of the mainstream. Suddenly everyone was telling him, you are the handsomest, most talented, sexiest guy on the planet. It's overwhelming to have that many people saying, you're great, yes, 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 to anything you wanted.
When his other acting roles in Victory and Nighthawks didn't score at the box office, Stallone decided to return for Rocky III in 1982.
Rocky had transcended being a fighter. He was now a symbol.
Drawing heavily on Stallone's own life, Rocky III is the story of a world heavyweight champion struggling with his newfound fame. Stallone said he saw the film as almost a documentary.
He had lost his edge. He was a little vain. He lost weight. He had his face fixed. He did everything to become more of a celebrity.
He wasn't likable in the beginning of the movie. He was everything that you didn't want him to be. He had the Maserati, he had the mansion, he had the this, he had the that.
Where in Rocky II, he was trying to do a commercial and he couldn't get through it without stumbling over his lines or fumbling the dialogue. Now he's advertising for American Express effortlessly and getting fitted for suits.
He's had a camel hair coat. I mean, he's loaded with money.
His hair was too nice, he was coiffed, almost like with the coats and little pompous. I was like, boy, who are you? Now, what have you become?
When you now have everything at your beck and call, and people start to protect you and separate you from your roots, and you lose your traction in reality.
Rocky becomes bloated, and this success gets to him. And I think, to a large degree, the same thing happened to Sylvester Stallone.
For both, over-the-top fame threatened the underdog appeal that had made them famous.
Sylvester Stallone, in particular, seemed to have kind of forgotten so many aspects of what made Rocky a compelling character.
There's a kind of disassociation with your public. You start to change a little bit, not always for the best. I said, let me put that in Rocky III.
Maybe the best way of saying it is hubris, which brings a lot of people down. We see it every day. It's maybe one of those flaws in us all that comes about as a result of certain amount of success and then sort of getting ahead of yourself.
Stallone knew that a lot would be riding on the casting of Rocky's next adversary. Stallone surprisingly cast someone who is neither an actor nor a boxer, someone he had spotted on the America's Toughest Bouncer competition.
Mr. T was Leon Spinks' bodyguard, and he was very flashy. Had the mohawk, had the earrings, and oh, hey, man.
Mr. T's role, a fierce young boxer named Clubber Lang, was supposed to be a bit part, but the role kept growing.
Mr. T, had something. He had that charisma, that larger-than-life, that X factor, whatever it is that makes the camera like you and transfers your energy to the audience. I think that's very important.
But getting the fast-talking, streetwise Mr. T to work with a professional film crew was a challenge.
Well, he kind of had a reputation for being tough, whether he was a guy from the streets or not, I don't know. He wasn't really, at that point, an actor.
I didn't think he was much of a fighter, and he didn't act like much of a fighter.
Stallone decided to make their first fight short and brutal.
By the time we got into Mr. T, that's where it really became more difficult, because I said, let's cut it down to 3 rounds. So it had to have as many punches, if you follow a mathematic code, as last fight, which was successful. Now you can't shortchange people, but you got to jam in that many punches into 3 rounds as opposed to 15 rounds.
The fight still had to be authentic.
You wanted it to look like a fight.
And that meant training.
It was Mr. T that didn't work. Whatever kind of punch he wanted to throw, that's what he did. He never listened.
And one of those things where you have to maybe call him a couple times to get to the set because don't realize the importance of doing it. Although Sly was very good at getting people to do things. He had an urgency that he could look people in the eyes and they would understand
Despite his inexperience, Mr. T channeled his oversized persona into a genuinely menacing foe.
So, Clubber Lang, what's your prediction for the fight?
Pain.
When they meet, Rocky suffers two of the biggest losses of his career at Clubber Lang's hands, a sudden knockout and the death of his trainer, Mickey.
We did it.
We did it. We did it. When he died in the movie, I said, maybe I should have put him on life support. I hated to get rid of him, really. He didn't like going either. I could have kept him bedridden for another movie or so.
After the loss, Rocky needs help. Enter former antagonist Apollo Creed.
Got to get that look back, Rock. Eye of the tiger, man. Eye of the tiger, come on.
And eventually he lost, quote, his eye of the tiger.
A tiger is one mean animal. You throw that tiger in the ring with any other cat, and he will make mincemeat out of him.
That means the killer instinct.
Eye of the tiger. I've been walking around with that saying in my mind since 1970. I just heard it somewhere. It said, Eye of the tiger. 15 years later, I used it.
After a pep talk from Adrian, Rocky becomes reinvigorated.
Apollo thinks you can do it. So do I. But you gotta want to do it for the right reasons.
Training would make Rocky leaner than ever before, and Stallone too, who reportedly trimmed down to a startling 2.8% body fat.
He risked to get so cut up in Rocky III, they actually got sick. You can't hold 3% body fat for that long. You'd go into cardiac arrest.
Rocky manages to outbox Clubber Lang and reclaims his title. Rocky III seemed to have taken both Stallone and his hero to the limit. But it wouldn't be long before both were pushed even further.
It was brutal. Let me tell you, those shots, I ended up in the hospital for 5 days.